The heat of the asphalt, the respectful silence broken only by the ancient and monotonous song, when out of nowhere, the entire sky seemed to tear open in a cascade of white feathers. It wasn't a light rain, but a celestial blizzard, a perfect squadron of doves returning years later, to the place where they had already made an unforgettable appearance, a sign so powerful that even the most skeptical trembled. But what happened next surpassed the first manifestation. For the birds descended, and chose exactly where to land, touching the heads and shoulders of people in a direct and impressive communion. This experience reminds us that faith is alive and that signs can appear when the soul's need is great, bringing a promise of peace. For this peace to reach all who need it, we must act urgently in prayer. Write now in the comments the name of that loved one, a relative or neighbor who urgently needs spiritual support, healing, or a miracle in their life, because we will include all these names in our main prayer, offering our rosary for them, so that they may feel the power of this message. The small town, nestled among gentle hills and steeped in tradition, already bore the scar of a similar event that had occurred years before, a time of great local tribulation, where, amidst a prolonged drought and a series of misfortunes, white doves appeared for the first time, marking the end of suffering and the arrival of prosperity. At the time, many thought it was just a chance occurrence, the migration of birds that, by luck or misfortune, crossed the path of the patron saint's main procession, but the memory remained etched in the minds of the elders, a tale passed down from generation to generation that spoke of hope and divine attention to the small and forgotten. This history, this local legend of a promise that hung over the town, gave an almost mystical weight to the new celebration. It wasn't just an annual act of faith. It was a silent vigil, an almost subconscious waiting to see if the miracle might, perhaps, repeat itself, bringing the certainty that faith, that seed planted and cultivated with sacrifice and pain, had not been ignored by a God who sees the depths of the heart and the real needs of his children. The day of the procession began with the usual expectation, marked by the exhaustion and dedication of the faithful who walked under a scorching sun, following the slow and majestic image carried on tired shoulders. It was a sea of sweaty faces and gazes focused on the banner, each step symbolizing a request, a thank you, or the pain of a loss. It was a moment of surrender where social barriers fell, and the only identity that remained was that of a pilgrim, walking towards a purpose greater than momentary comfort. As they crossed the longest stretch of the main avenue, the point where the heat reflected most intensely on the asphalt and energies seemed to diminish, the monotony of the journey gave way to a true test of endurance, and it was precisely at that moment, at that peak of physical exhaustion and spiritual fervor, that the silence of the crowd was broken by a sound unlike any bell or chant known, a growing sound of rapidly moving wings, coming from an unexpected direction. A sudden disruption of the order established by the routine of the event. And then the moment arrived, a breathtaking sight that froze the procession. The sudden appearance, from above and from the sides of the rooftops, of hundreds of white doves flying in impeccable formation. These were not ordinary street birds, but doves of immaculate white, forming a large circle above the image being carried, flying low in a spiral that seemed intentional, slowing their flight until they appeared to be floating in silent adoration. The air around the image and the crowd seemed to thicken, imbued with a sense of peace that contrasted with the previous heat, and the chanting that had almost died out was reborn in emotional voices. But the climax of the experience was reserved for the moment when, suddenly, several of the birds descended from their aerial formation and began to land. They did not land on the eaves, nor on the nearest trees, but rather on the heads and shoulders of the faithful, in a gesture of inexplicable intimacy and total surrender. What followed was a scene of pure emotion, a living testament to the materialization of an unusual grace. The white doves, ancient symbols of peace and the Holy Spirit in various cultures, showed no fear or hesitation. They landed gently on the head of the oldest man, in the hands of the children who stretched out their arms in fascination, and on the shoulders of those who, bowed under the weight of faith, seemed most in need of a comforting touch. The event lasted no more than a few intense minutes, but it was enough time to create an indelible memory. There, in that instant, the boundary between the material and the spiritual seemed to vanish, replaced by a palpable certainty that they were not alone on the journey. Tears flowed, not of sadness, but of surprise and gratitude for receiving such an intimate and physical blessing, a silent confirmation that purity and hope were returning to their community. But why did these doves return? And what does this apparition mean? The meaning transcends mere zoology or chance. The reappearance, years later, served as a powerful message of reaffirmation. It wasn't just that the people of that city had kept the faith. It was that, despite trials, they continued to walk in love and solidarity. The dove, which has already appeared to humanity in crucial moments of floods and new beginnings, symbolizes the announcement of lasting peace and the sign that the storm has passed or is about to pass, and the experience of touching them, of feeling them, functioned as a shock of spiritual reality, a physical reminder that forgiveness, tranquility of soul, and the pursuit of unity among brothers are the true portals to the manifestation of miracles in our daily lives. They came, specifically, to validate that the path to peace is the path of continuous conversion, and that hope is a virtue that repeats and renews itself, even if the world says otherwise. The experience transformed the city. The return of the white doves was not just a bird show. It was a catalyst for change. Those who were there and felt the light weight of the wings on their heads took home a new tranquility, a stronger sense of community. Old rivalries diminished, suspicious glances gave way to smiles of recognition, and the practice of prayer gained renewed strength, for now they had a shared testimony, a collective memory that the divine manifests itself in unexpected ways when there is an open heart. The lesson was clear. The presence of peace is not imposed, but rather offered to those who keep their path open to love and perseverance, showing that faith does not need grand temples to manifest itself, only the sincerity and purity of the desire for better days for oneself and one's loved ones. This story of the doves returning to the procession in a small town teaches us something profound about our daily lives. We cannot expect aerial miracles and divine spectacles to occur every day in our busy lives for us to believe, but the lesson is that we must build the ground conducive to this peace constantly descending upon us. Just as those people continued to walk in faith, even under the sun and weariness, we must do our part daily, cultivating forgiveness to free our hearts from burdens, seeking inner peace to radiate it outwardly, and intensifying our preaching through example, thus ensuring that our faith is an act of continuous conversion. The doves came as a visible sign. Our sign must be the invisible change in our character and actions. Faith demands movement, and movement demands prayer. Therefore, I reiterate, we need more names. If you remembered someone else now with more urgency and need, comment their name below, as everyone will be included in the special intention of our rosary today. The visit of these celestial birds reinforces that the manifestation of faith resides in simplicity. The spectacle was not only in the number of doves, but in the message of unconditional love they brought. They show us that peace is tangible, hope is real, and that God is always attentive to humanity's return, waiting for the exact moment to give a sign of reaffirmation. Now think about the meaning of this event for you. In which area of your life do you feel the doves of peace need to land? What pain needs relief? What anguish needs to be transformed into serenity? And what is your greatest request to heaven at this moment in your life? We would like to know which part of this incredible experience touched you most deeply and what message you felt the white doves were transmitting to that multitude of faithful. Leave your sincere comment below. Share your impressions on the theme of manifested faith and how it resonates in your heart. If this story brought you a sense of comfort and renewed hope, don't forget to like this video, help spread this message of peace and faith, and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next stories of curious events that strengthen our spirituality. May the peace of these doves remain upon your home and your family.